All right, welcome to another episode of God Yay or Nay. I'm here with Suvi Inkinen. Suvi, thanks for joining me.
Thank you. And how do I say your name?
It's
Just
Noor.
Noor.
Yeah.
Okay, Noor. Most
Yeah.
likely I would say it wrong, but
Hey,
at least
I probably said your last name wrong, so I think that's all right. So though I'm really excited for this podcast because I know you're like so you are into like you help people transform. I guess that's how you'll call it. Like transform their life. You're kind of a coach and you help people with psychedelic integration, which is something I'm extremely interested in. Maybe give my audience a little background of how you got into this work.
You mean the psychedelic work?
Yeah, sure. And also like personal transformation as well.
So I think like for a lot of people like myself who do this work, it's not a chosen career and your life is your biggest teacher. It's like you're taught all these sometimes really hard things and you don't understand why you have to go through what you go through until you get to a point where you can look back and people start to come to you and you're like, oh, that is why. So for me, I always wanted to do something to help people. So I used to be a counselor and social worker in a crisis center in Finland, where I'm from, for teens and their families. And I'm like, it's too much for my heart. And I just couldn't, you see the worst of the worst.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went into clinical and holistic body work, and the coaching was kind of always on the background there for me. And transformational work began through my own transformation when I learned the tools to be okay coming from a place where I was ready to end my own life. And I saw how powerful that work is. And I wanted to gift it to others because I think that's why we go through that. So we can give that light to someone else. And then psychedelic work is interesting because until I was 39, and if I had people I dated or friends who were talking about any kind of psychedelics, and I just showed them the door and I'm like, not interested. I never smoked weed, did nothing. Partially because of the things I saw in my previous work, but also it's fear and, the control and, you didn't want to let go. And then also what I want to change with my work was my stopping thing. I only heard about it being used as a drug and I still don't have any interest for that. But I use it for transformational work and for healing work, which is a totally different ballgame and totally different thing. So I got into psychedelic medicine through a lot of weird happenings when I was 39. And it just pulled me in and I never looked back. It's like I was meant to do this work, but I needed to be prepared for it.
Mm-hmm. And what was first psychedelic that you kind of tried that kind of got you like, all right, this is for me?
So another thing with all of this is that you don't find medicine finds you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's something I want to put out there. So don't force these things. But for me, the first one was psilocybin, which was the perfect companion for me because I was lacking a lot of joy in my life. And it's the sacred child. It's the goofy, it's hard work with them as well. But it's like they bring the joy and the cheekiness into the work. It's not as hardcore, I think, in that way as Ayahuasca, for example. And then Pedro was the one that kind of came to me and shook me and said, okay, work with me. So those two are my main ones.
Okay, so psilocybin, which would be mushrooms, and then Pedro, which is like San Pedro, the cactus, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And can you actually tell our audience a little bit of like the difference between them, like, and just kind of how they operate?
You mean those two different medicines?
Yes.
So, and this is another thing that I want to say to everyone. Everybody's perception and idea and thought of the medicine is their own. So whether you read things or not, think for yourself and feel what it is for you. And this is my personal opinion and what the medicine has showed me. So like I said, I feel like mushrooms is more, obviously shorter, the period of, how long it lasts when you're doing it. But it's more intense for me, but it's more playful as well.
Okay.
But then and it's this like childlike energy. It's I
Mm-hmm.
don't know how to explain it. And then with San Pedro, who is called the grandfather, and for me, it's like even when it gets really hard, and I feel like they all take you to the same place. That's another interesting thing that I've noticed. They just take you there in a different way. But with
Mm-hmm.
San Pedro, it's like even when you're going through a hard period with him, he has his arm around your shoulder like a grandfather. I see him as this, like a Santa Claus, but like with different kind of clothing and skinny Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how it feels like when I'm working with him. But also San Pedro is it's more body. So
Okay.
it's more like you're flying sometimes, but it's more like physical.
Okay, you
And
can feel
it's
it in
more
your
grounding.
body.
Yeah. So
Oh.
it's more, at least that's been my experience and the clients that I've worked with. And for me, I always get like a bigger picture type of thing with San Pedro. It's like it
Mm.
gently shows you things and puts things together that you maybe gotten information from the mushrooms and you get like bits and pieces.
Mm.
And not always, but that's kind of like in a
That's kind of been
majority of
your
the time, that's how it's worked for me.
I like how you said they all kind of take you to the same spot, like, because
Yeah.
I kind of felt the same way with my experiences with psychedelics. I
You had
haven't.
ayahuasca, was it?
Yeah, so ayahuasca is the one I worked with probably the most and I'm most familiar with. And ever
Mhm.
since I started it, I've thrown everything else out and like I'm just like this is what I have like a real connection with.
Uh-huh.
And but I've tried mushrooms and LSD and stuff like that back in the day, and I do know that how it takes you to that psychedelic realm. I guess it's the same place. It like you kind of feel it. So I do like that. But it's kind of funny now that I'm kind of talking with a lot of people who do work like you.
Mhm.
It's funny how everybody kind of gives almost a gender to like the medicine they work with, a gender or maybe a spirit or some sort of kind of thing with it. And maybe I don't know. I guess I'm not that intuitive yet to kind of feel that. But can you maybe
Can I stop
explain?
you?
Yeah,
I'm going to
sure.
stop you right there. So I don't want you or anyone, and this is what comes with clients a lot, and they say, I'm not that intuitive. Like, I don't understand. I wish I had that guidance. The
Mm,
only reason you don't have the guidance is because you don't listen to it.
okay.
For each person, it's there all the time.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
stop telling yourself that you
All
don't
right.
have it. You're not
I'll
intuitive because you are.
okay. And but like when you talk about these medicines and you say like because when you talked about mushrooms, it seemed like you said her, and then when you talked about San Pedro, you said like a grandfather. Like, is this how you kind of like experience them?
So obviously there it's out there. Ayahuasca is the grandmother, San Pedro is the grandfather, and then mushrooms are the children,
Mm,
right? So obviously I had that like idea already in my head as I went into it, but then I saw visions of these energies. So I call it more, it's like people are describing the energy they feel, and these plants have a vibration and energy that they
mm,
come with because of what they are, right?
okay.
Um, so I feel like that's why people kind of have the same description, but it's a bit different. But they feel the energy; they just don't necessarily know how to describe it.
Okay.
And with Aya, it's interesting. And then also, what I've noticed, ayahuasca was never something that I was really drawn to. It was never, even though it's everywhere. And I'm like, yeah, it just doesn't feel like it's something that it's right now. And she's calling me to come in. But what is interesting is when I work with medicine, either myself or when I do shamanic work with people, and she comes in anyway. It's like I've worked with her before, so her energy pops in and she comes to kind of assist me.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, I like
Uh,
it.
yeah, and like I know like how you said like the medicine has to choose you. Like there is that feeling of like you're getting called to do this. Like that the exact same thing happened to me when I first tried ayahuasca, and every time I tried it afterwards, it's like I had this intuitive feeling like okay, this is the right time. And like usually when I have that feeling, all of a sudden like eventually like I get like somebody like a message or somebody emailing me saying this is happening or whatever. The opportunity just comes and pops its way in. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, time to do it.
Yeah, the universe is listening the same way that, Facebook, when you talk about things and the right ads pop up. So when you have the readiness and you speak about it,
Yeah, I
the
guess
universe is the same, but in a bigger scale, like then it starts to bring it to your awareness.
I guess the universe is the biggest algorithm out there,
Yeah,
right?
there you go.
All right, so I do love this whole idea of you helping people transform. You're using help them get through this psychedelic experience, which can be very tough for some people. So
Sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm like this. Can I interrupt you?
please,
Because I have
please.
something to say to what we were just talking about.
Okay.
So when people say that this is my medicine, right? Like I'm not really, like I had an experience with this medicine, but it wasn't my medicine. So sometimes the reason why they think it's not their medicine, the other aspect is that they didn't do it with the right setting, intention, respect, and the right way.
Mm-hmm.
So they had a bad experience with, say, mushrooms, and it wasn't a bad experience, and it's not that it's not their medicine, but they did it in a way that left them traumatized because they didn't know how to do it correctly, or not in the right environment. It could have been used as a party drug, or you know what I mean. So then they have this idea, they keep telling themselves that it's not my medicine because I had a bad experience.
Of course. And yeah, like set and setting is probably like the
So
most, yeah. And so I guess when you're helping people with this set and settings, like one of the first things you probably take into account.
it is one of the, so sorry, say the
Yeah, I
question again.
said like set and setting is probably one of the first things you take into an account when you're like helping people with these.
It's that, but it begins from their actual readiness for the medicine.
Hmm. Okay. And so how do you like actually are you there with like the people you're coaching like throughout the whole experience? Are you kind of there as a guide
So,
kind of thing?
and we can maybe throw the disclaimer here in the middle now.
Okay.
I forgot to say it because it kind of goes into this. So I think we're not advocating to use, or that is true for me. I'm not advocating to use these medicines where they're not legal. That's not what my work is about, or me talking about them. But a
Mm-hmm.
lot of people are doing them, and they are really helpful, and they are doing them in places where it is illegal, and also even by themselves. And I just want people to be safe and have all the information they need to do it the best way possible for them and get the most out of their experience. So that's more, I think, where we're both at.
100%.
And hopefully it will be legalized, but that's another topic that we can maybe talk about, why that's a bit problematic as well.
Of course. And so how do you help with like people like integrating their experiences? Because I think that's probably the biggest thing about when you do these substances, right?
So I think pre-integration is as important, if not even more, than the post.
Okay.
And I do this with people, whether they do it by themselves or if they do it with someone else, which I would always recommend. Never do these medicines alone if you do bigger doses. But you want to go into your journey in a way that you are with the people and in an environment and in the mind space where you can fully relax into the experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So that's the things that I work through with people before, but also you want to know what to do after you come home, because when you come, you need to prepare your space, who you have around. You might want to talk to who you live with, or if you have a partner or family members around, that I might need a bit of space before I come back. So don't bombard me with questions, and don't get offended if I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And you want to clear your environment, energetically, and you might want to clear energetically, but also get rid of shit that you don't need, because you're going to most likely come into that space as a different person. You don't want to have that old shit around anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of things like that. And plus, your diet, and physically, mentally, spiritually, in all ways, you want to be prepared for the journey so you can get most out of it, and then know what to do after. But then also, and I use this metaphor a lot, it's that people, they go to the peak of the mountain and they think they need to always have medicine to go there. And integration helps you stay, not crash straight down when you're done with your journey.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
100%.
And also the medicine doesn't want to, and this is the message I get all the time. They don't want to handicap you. They're here to teach you and guide you and show you the place within where they take you, but it's always there.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea is for you, like I hear these, I just had a conversation with a client and she was telling me about her healer friend who, and doesn't work with medicine herself, but she goes and does ceremonies twice a month. And I'm like,
Okay.
that's too much, because you're not really integrating all of that and doing the work that medicine shows you to do.
Yeah, of course.
Mm.
And like you were saying, you get that like peak of the mountain experience, and the whole thing is to come out of it and be able to kind of still be
Say,
able to
you know?
still be able to get to that experience, right?
Exactly. Because one, we don't want to be there all the time. The work is, and I did a post about this, the work is here. You go up there to get a better view of what the work down here is. Then you come down and you do the work. But it's easier because you remember that place.
Exactly.
Everything
And
is clear, and
and if you don't do the work like afterwards, it like the experience just kind of almost becomes
no,
useless, right?
no. And then in a way, it makes you feel even less powerful yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Do you
And
know what
then,
I mean?
oh
Because
yeah.
the power within you comes from you going through adversity and going through suffering and transforming it into something else. And if you
Mm-hmm.
don't do that work, you feel, and this was another conversation I had with a client a few days ago, when she was telling me about how she's gone to all these healers and all these people, astrologists and everyone, to find help. And I said, it's important to go, and it's beautiful to go and see people like that or people like me sometimes. But if you do it all the time, you're thinking that you need everyone else to do that for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you're forgetting that you have the power here. Like I was doing shamanic work for a client, and I remember I thought it was so beautiful, and I think it's important thing to maybe mention, that she had all these crystals around her neck, for protection. And in the middle of it, all of a sudden, she just took them all and she's like, fuck, I don't need them. And she was putting them aside. And I said, that it's you, it's not this. And she's like, yes, like these are powerful, beautiful tools to have, or people around you, healers and all kinds of people. But ultimately, you don't need any of it,
Mm-hmm. No,
right?
yeah, of course. And
You're powerful. When you're strong here, nothing can hurt you. Yes, these are beautiful to work with, but you don't need them.
and you need to have that self-empowerment. If you don't have that, then what do you have, right?
Yeah, exactly. So yes, go and have sessions with people and help them guide you along, but then come back to your own power and do
Mm-hmm.
the.
And do the work. And I think that is like anybody who wants to try these medicines, they need to understand that, because if you don't do the work, it just becomes escapism, right? It just
Exactly, and it's another addiction, and it's just a form of spiritual bypassing.
mm-hmm. And and the worst thing is just to try to constantly get back to that place by
Yeah.
having to take these medicines, because
Then you keep telling yourself that I can't do it by myself.
mm-hmm.
And that's like, it's another belief that it's bullshit belief, but you keep reinforcing it by that behavior, I think.
Mm-hmm. And becomes it's not that's not the way you want to do it. And like do the work afterwards, and like trust me, when you do have these experiences, you'll come out of it or you should come out of it understanding, like, okay, this is the kind of work you've done. That's a beauty.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's all of
Again,
my
but again, our opinion, right?
mm-hmm.
Everybody has, and it's okay if you think differently than me and you. That's okay. That's your path, but that's just what I've learned and what I know for me.
True that. Yeah,
Mm.
100%. So like now that we're seeing these medicines becoming like very culturally like popular, and
Uh-huh.
we're even now starting to get them legalized and everything, like you're starting to see kind of like clinical like psychology and stuff and therapy and everything kind of coming into this as well. Like what are your how do you look at that when you see like a clinical psychologist like now running these kind of therapies with like mushrooms or MDMA and stuff like that?
So first of all, what I'm about to say is I want to believe that everyone who is in the helping field does the best they know for the greatest good of their client, regardless. They do the best with what they know now, right? So this is in no way judgment to anyone who want to give these medicines to their clients, whether they're clinicians, psychologists, whoever it is, right?
Yeah.
So I just want to put that out there because I don't want this to sound like I'm like going like this. But I feel that the problem, I mean, it's good that the conversation is open and people are seeing the results because there's so many clinical trials being done. And people who are intellectual and they need to see that data. And I get it because I was that person. I still kind of am at times. But when it gets to a point where it's legalized and it looks like the medical industry is going to be determining who has the access to it, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of the shamans and the traditional people still won't be able to use it with their clients legally, right? So that's a problem, I think, and hopefully that will change one day. But in the hands of clinicians, so this is what kind of woke me up, and I started doing quite a lot of questioning around it and asking around and looking what's going on. And I've shared this story a few times. And I had a client from the US, and she has big history with trauma. And she told me that she's never done mushrooms before, and her psychologist had suggested to her to help with the trauma and what she was struggling with. So when she went into the session and before they began, they offered her Valium and Xanax just in case it gets so hard that she needs to come out of it. And then they gave her, I think, 5 grams of mushrooms and MDMA all in one go. And she was in tears. So there's so many things that are wrong from the get-go with this story.
They gave her both mushrooms and MDMA at the same time?
At the same time for someone who's never had them. But I think the bigger problem is the offering of Valium and Xanax, because so she called me and she was in tears because she wasn't guided through into her darkness. She was like said, okay, if it gets scary, come out. And they couldn't explain and make her understand that it were shadows who were coming to the surface, and just for her to let them go, just to be aware of them, acknowledge them, see them so they can be released. And she was pulled out of it because she got scared and nobody told her what to do because they didn't understand the medicine. So she was in tears when she called me. She's like, I don't know what to do. Like this, I come home and I'm like, everything is, I don't know what to do. And I just thought, okay, something is wrong here. So the problem that with this, for example, just as an example, Valium and Xanax, so when I'm prepping someone for their journey, there's nothing to be afraid of that you need to be pulled out of it with pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
That's really telling the person that there's something scary within you, and this is something scary and out of control, and we might need to pull you out of it, which is bullshit.
And
right?
don't,
like her, like the prep is done in such a way that she's already like petrified going into it. So that's the problem, I think, is that a lot of clinicians, some of them, not all, but some maybe never even sat with the medicine. Like for me, I don't think you should, whether it's shamanic or sitting for someone, you should never do that for a person unless you've experienced that specific medicine.
Yeah.
Because if they take you to the same place, you need to know how it feels to be there.
Of course. And like probably have taken it many times and like have a very comfort level and understanding of it.
So what I would love to see is that, and this is a platform that I want to establish at some point, where I can have an educational platform for clinicians to come and learn about the tradition, learn about the medicine. They understand the medicine, right? Respect the medicine and see the spiritual aspect of it and how it actually works outside of clinical, trials. And then who doesn't want to come, that's fine. But at least you have the education. And then there would be people who do shamanic work all over the world that I know that are good and they're doing it from the right place. And then they could just hire a shaman from their area to come and sit with them for the client.
And
but I think that's the biggest thing, is that when you pull the spirit kind of out of it and you're giving a medicine, that already kind of splits what the whole experience is about. And I just want people to be more educated and understand this.
yeah, and like you said, there's just so much wrong with that. Like, offering somebody value just before it, like you said, it just it makes them not even confront their demons, which is like, if you're going to heal trauma, you need to, like, that's going to be a part of it, probably. Like, that's most probably going to.
And that's the gift of the medicine. It's allowing you to let go of those heavy burdens you've been carrying your whole life, or maybe, you know, ancestral things, or for your parents, for, you know, and that's what the medicine is trying to gift you. And then somebody is giving you Valium to pull you out of it. It's like,
No,
why?
it seems like the weirdest thing to do.
Right? Yeah. So support the person in the process. Tell them that it's okay, because
And
it is okay.
yeah, and and then the whole idea of, like, somebody not even experiencing it and then giving somebody 5 grams of mushrooms, which is just that's a lot of mushrooms. Like, that just seems like weird.
Yeah, it just, yeah. And then when you were asking how I work otherwise, so this has been the new thing that has popped up for me, is, so I do shamanic work through, so when people go into ceremony, and if they don't have anyone there, they have someone to look after them, but they don't have anyone there. So it started happening to me, and I'm like, okay, what is this? And it's like a new layer of weirdness. So they can invite me into their ceremony, and I can do shamanic work on them while they're in the medicine. And sometimes they can see me while they go up there doing the work while I'm doing it at home. So that's something new that I can assist with, even though I can't do it here legally, unfortunately, yet. But in retreats one day, that's in the plans, in other places where we can.
Yeah, that's okay. That's impressive. I wish you the best of luck with that.
Yeah, I'm hoping to save for myself.
All right, I want to talk a little bit about some of the transformations you made in your life.
Okay.
I was reading about like a little bit on of your bio, and it seems like you struggled a lot with eating disorders and perfectionism, like, mostly. I guess it was years ago, but this is like kind of where I don't know exactly when the timeline is, but like, this is kind of where your transformation, like, where you kind of started learning about transformation, and some of your biggest transformations came from, was learning to heal yourself from those. Can you maybe, like, share a little bit about how that happened?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so what I think in general is, when we're born, so I was going somewhere with this, and now I lost my train of thought. Okay, I'm going to go straight into the transformation, but if it comes back to me, I will share it with you. So for me, I struggled with eating disorder since I was 15 on, up to my mid-30s.
Oh, wow.
And it's something that it never goes away, because you always have to eat.
Yeah.
But also, I don't want to call it. So it's like, it's there. And I notice the thoughts come up sometimes, but I'm aware of them, and I know where they're coming from, and I know what to do with them. Right. And with eating disorders in general, what I just want to put out there as well, and I've spoken about it a few times, is that I don't want to say that I or anyone else had an eating disorder or anything. It's just your way of dealing with emotions that nobody taught you how to deal with.
Okay.
So it can be, you know, alcohol, it can be drugs, whatever, or trauma, or things that happen to you, for you, or emotions, or things that you don't know what to do with because you were not taught it. And then you find something to numb them down, or something, because you need something, right? When it gets overwhelming. So I feel like we need to talk about more of that, and not put a label on somebody's head and then that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like, it all stems from the same place. When you get so far from who you really are, and you layer yourself with people's expectations and the conditioning from the society. And like, I grew up in a family where my brother is this high achiever, person who like feels like whatever he touches turns to gold. And I
Mm-hmm.
always try to emulate that as the younger sister. And I always, and I'm a spiritual, this weird woo-woo person, and now I'm kind of embracing it fully. And he was an engineer, and all of these kind of things. And I'm like, I wanted to be him, and I slowly began to forget my power and what I'm about, right? Because I tried to become like him to
Mm-hmm.
get validation and that acceptance and that love and all of that from my family. And I feel like that's how a lot of us, where that comes from, is like you start to forget who you are, and you start to try to be something you're not, which is part of perfectionism, because then you begin to need that validation from everyone but yourself. And you
Mm.
slowly have to, and transformation for me has been, and that's kind of the key sentence that I use, is to strip away the layers that are not you. And the transformation happened after I started taking those layers away, and I remembered me. And it took me, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And it's still happening. Like now I'm so close to it, and it makes me sad to look back and think all the things that happened and how lost I felt, and it was always here.
Yeah.
But that's like, you have to go through that to learn and to be where I am today. So big message maybe to people would be to embrace your suffering, because it's your greatest teacher. And we're not here to have rainbows and butterflies all the time, because you don't evolve and grow at all if that's the case all the time.
Yep. And I think that's like what the psychedelic experience kind of teaches us, is like, stop trying to fight the experience, like whatever emotion or suffering, or even if it's bliss, whatever it is that comes up, like experience and be fully with it. And sorry, say that again.
Surrender to it.
Surrender to it, exactly. And yeah, embrace your suffering. I do like that, because like you were saying, like when we have that suffering and we don't know how to handle suffering or emotions, we run away to different stuff. And like, yeah, everybody has their different.
And that's the thing, I think, and I wish I could give some people, I wish I could show them what I see, but I can't, because they have to go through their thing. But suffering becomes suffering when we resist what is happening to us.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And
it's happening to us because you ask for that to happen to you, for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we would see the bigger picture, and we could see the path that you laid for you, and we could see, that you're still guided throughout, and you can see, it's like, I call them the breadcrumbs. And in one journey, I could see these synchronicities and things that I see, and it's like, oh, what is this? What is this? And it keeps you there. And I could see them placing them, this color purple that always pulls me, or, certain things that are along, it's like it pulls you back, and it's like somebody's looking after me. It's all over. It's everywhere. And it's like, you're not suffering for no reason. Just embrace. And it's like, oh, this is going to be my biggest learning. I'm going to be more me after this, and trust that it's there for a reason, because it is.
Yeah. And yeah, and that trust is a big thing too, isn't it? Like, you have to have that inner trust, like you're meant to experience this, and that allows you to actually accept it and experience it fully.
But I think trust comes through practice.
Yeah.
And trust comes through, and this is what I just got tattooed, which is one of my favorite things to say. Trust comes from finding comfort in between letting go and letting come.
Oh, okay.
The middle space is the hard space, when you're letting go of something, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the trust, you find the trust in the middle when the letting come is not there yet.
Yeah.
And you have to practice that surrender between letting go of something that was comfortable for you and you knew, and being in that middle space where you don't know what's going to come exactly, but you trust that it's going to be okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then psychedelic medicine is the thing that for me gave me that trust, because I was questioning everything. I'm such in my mind kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden, when you see it all, and all the things you questions are just shown to you, and it's like, okay, now I can trust, because I remember this place and I know that it's there. Not everybody needs medicine necessarily for this.
Of
But for
course.
me, like I could just go and think, okay, what is my next story and my next step? I don't need to know the whole picture because I know that it's okay. And
Hmm.
magic starts to happen when you do that.
It really does.
That's just been my experience.
Yeah, and actually, like even like when I was starting to work with ayahuasca, I remember the first few times because it's so new and it's kind of scary and overwhelming. Like there was like resistance in me, especially with the experience. Like I'm fighting it when it gets a little too overwhelming and stuff like that. But after like maybe my third time or fourth time, that's when I really was just like, you know what, like I've been with this medicine before and it's always helped me. And then like I developed this like deep, deep trust with it. And
Mm,
that like just made the experience just go so much deeper and like made me learn so much more about myself and take so much more out of the experience. And so like yeah, that trust is it is something that yeah, it's something that's like really
practice.
profound. And practice,
Yeah,
you got to practice it.
yeah. And so I put up a post about this and I want to do this with you too. So let's turn the tables for 2 seconds.
Hmm.
What has been the most profound experience or lesson or teaching that you have learned with ayahuasca?
I guess it would have been my second time doing it in the jungle.
Mm.
And
What happened?
so like I drank it and within like 15 minutes I threw it up. And
Mm,
so I was just kind of sitting there the whole night, kind of thinking like, did I throw it up? Like, is it in me? And like, I wasn't experiencing anything. And then finally I was just kind of like a couple hours in and I can tell everybody else is like completely immersed in their trips. And like, I wasn't experiencing anything. So I just went back to my hut and I'm like, I think I'm done for the night. But then all of a sudden it like hit me hard and like I
mm,
started getting a fever. I started getting like yeah, I just started like getting pain all over and like I just started getting like an anxiety attack and panic. And I was like, oh, what's going on? What's going on? And like I just was like completely fighting it and just completely scared of it. And then all of a
you
sudden,
were
like
alone? You
I
were
was,
alone?
yeah, I went, yeah, because I left the ceremony. So now I'm just in my hut by myself. But then all of a sudden, like I realized this is the medicine doing it to me. And it kind of like, it kind of communicates with you, not with words, but you know how it like it communicates you with you where you're kind of like understanding what it's saying to you. But it was telling me like, it was showing me like how much pain is in the world and like how lucky you are to like not experience like so much pain that's out there. And it was telling you like you're never grateful for anything in your life, and it was showing me like how ungrateful I was for it and like how I never am grateful. And that's
Mm,
when like I started like like I started pleading with the medicine. I'm like, I'm sorry, I'll be grateful. You know, I started like going like that and I'm like, oh, I promise. And that's when I went and I purged harder than I ever have before. I just started throwing up
mm,
like just insane. And then like this calmness came over me and I just went on my bed. And that's when I first like experienced gratefulness like through my whole body as just
mm,
something that like just emanates through my whole being. And
mm,
yeah, and then like it just showed me my whole life. It showed me like all the important people in my life and why I should be grateful for them. And ever since then, like gratefulness has just been a part of like who I am. and
mm,
and that like really changed me. Like if, like well, you know how powerful gratefulness is. Like so when you can kind of carry that around into everyday life, and like you said, integration, I try to remind myself of gratefulness all the time. And I know the feeling, like I know the feeling of gratefulness now, like it's there with me. So yeah,
mm.
that's easily the most or the yeah, that's easily the ayahuasca trip. That was the biggest most profound in my life for sure.
Oh, that's super beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Hey, no worries. Thank you for
And with
asking.
that, I actually, when you were talking, so that's something that I think people should know when we're talking about pre-integration. And this is what makes a bad trip for someone, in addition to so many other things, is their expectation of how it should be because
Hmm.
they hear of other people's experiences. I've had, if I give you an example of an experience where I was journeying with mushrooms and I took quite a big dose in that journey. And all of a sudden, I'm just sitting there and nothing happened. Right. And I was expecting answers and all this information and journey properly. And I'm like, but nothing's happening.
Mm.
And then the big lesson from that was that it's already in me. I don't need you anymore, or I don't need them anymore. You know what I mean? So sometimes the biggest lessons, or I have a friend who I did journeyed in Amsterdam for a retreat, and she had one of those journeys where everybody else was having these massive cathartic experiences around her, and she's like, fuck, nothing's happening. And that was 2 times in a row. And now 8 months on, and she said her entire life has changed because of, so it works on you. So don't have this idea of how it should be, because sometimes it doesn't work the way you think it works. Let's put it this way, right? Like, even if you don't physically get anything, it's still working on you. So just embrace it and be aware of the changes to come. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't just happen in the journey, it happens months after.
Hell yeah. And like how you said, like just nothing happening, and like making that, giving you that understanding, like, hey, it's in you. Sometimes that's the biggest push for you, because like I've had that happen. Like maybe I think it was like my 5th ayahuasca trip or something, because I was doing it every year. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I remember I had like a really calm trip that didn't have much of anything pop in, but like it gave me that feeling of like, you don't need me right now.
Right.
And then like you come out of that completely motivated, because you're like, well, now I don't have any medicine to fall back on. Like I better go out there and make some shit happen. So how about your, I was going to say, how about yourself then? Like, do you have like a profound experience from medicine that like stands out like to you?
Every single one of them, but I think one, well, this was with Pedro, where I went through 10 hours of, I would call it the cosmic void, and I thought I'm stuck there. And I went through lives, like some of them were mine and some of them were other people's lives, where I couldn't experience or see anyone, but I was experiencing the lowest of low. Oh, this is a human see it. You know, a person in a concentration camp, and I was a whore on the street, and I could feel how they felt. And this was my 10 hours. And I was like, fuck, this is just rough, isn't it? Mm-hmm. And then the big thing, I mean, there was a lot of things that came out of it, but the big thing that I learned, and it became part of my life's mission, is to make sure that every person, whoever they are, whatever they do, whatever is going on in their life, I want them to feel seen and know that their life matters. Because it does. Because because I felt how it feels like to be nothing. Mm-hmm. Right. Sorry.
No, that's all
so
right.
That was huge. And then another one that I had with mushrooms was where I could see the split of the timelines, and I went to the source and they showed me everything. And I remember when I came back or I felt like I'm coming back, and I asked, will I forget this? And they said, not this time, because you're the great rememberer. And I never forgot since. So it's like, I can go back there and see this view and then come back. And that's, so I think, but that was also, you know, the feeling of the ego death, where you're like fully, and that's the trust bit, right? You know, when have you had this experience when you're pulled fully away from you?
Yeah.
And it's terrifying. And when you fight it, like, oh my God, what if I don't come back? And the suffering is in the middle before you let go, and then it's just beautiful.
Yeah. That's this last February when I went on like ayahuasca retreat. That's where I finally let go of it. I was doing like a lot of deep meditation like the months before, and I was constantly getting to that place where you're like, you can let
just
go of it all. Yeah, but like I would always pop out of it because I was just scared shitless. The ego death, like when it's going, like when you feel it like leaving, it's insanely like it's very like scary. It feels like
Scary.
you're
You
letting
feel
go of
anxiety,
everything.
everything. Mm.
Yeah. And
But also, I don't want people to think like when we talk about ego death, that's not one. We need our ego to exist. That's just the like the way we talk about it. Like that's not the point of that. And also, it's not necessarily something that you like. This is what I need to get. A lot of people, people who are like, that's why they do medicine, because I want to have an ego death. This is what I want, and that's the ego wanting the ego death, which is irony in itself. You know what I mean? And also, did you have this? I remember when I had this happen. It's been like maybe twice, and they just said to me, "You asked for this." I'm like, "Fuck."
Oh, really?
Like,
yeah, that actually kind of sounds a little like you're like,
I'm like,
oh,
fuck,
damn it,
I
all
put
right.
myself into a hole here.
You asked for this. That kind of seems like a movie line or something.
It was like a gut punch to the ego.
Yeah,
Directly, like, there you go.
yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, so on Instagram you are Huna Works. So Huna,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I was kind of looking at what Huna is, and like it seems like it's a little bit of a philosophy based in Hawaii. Like, could you maybe tell us a little bit about Huna?
So in short, I think it embodies or secret. If everybody knows The Secret, right?
Yeah.
Book and the so it embodies secret embodies a lot of the parts of Huna, and I didn't exactly know even what it meant. I had it tattooed. I was really drawn to the word when I was in Hawaii, and I had it tattooed on me, and I'm like, then I started doing research after on it, and it's a philosophy for life. And the main thing for me that I use it, and it's part of, so I was doing body work, which included Lomi Lomi as well, which is part of that practice.
Okay.
And Ho'oponopono, which is, and you know Ho'oponopono, right?
No, I don't.
So that's another long story, but it's a way of letting things go and healing you and healing others around you and letting go of, so it's for things that you say as a mantra. It's hold on. I love you, I forgive you, I'm sorry, thank you. Okay. And you keep saying it as a mantra as you do your meditation, or you can have a thing that you want to let go of, and you keep saying that mantra linked to that thing, and it's clearing, energetically clearing. But Huna for me is more about this whole idea of letting go and letting come that I spoke about before, about surrender, about trust, and where you put your energy, that's what's going to come more into your life.
Yeah.
So it's there's 7, I can't remember them by heart, but there's 7 main laws in Huna. Did you read them? They were on the page as well.
Yeah, I did read them. I can't remember them.
Do you have them? Do you have them?
I can read. Do not.
No? Hold on. I will read them to you.
Okay.
So I don't really think about it for myself anymore, because that's just how I live my life. Mm-hmm. So the 7 principles. Aiki, the world is what you think it is. Kala, there are no limits. Everything is possible. Makia, energy flows where attention goes. Manava, now is the moment of power. Aloha, to love is to be happy. Mana, power comes from within. Pono, effectiveness is the measure of truth.
Yeah, those are beautiful.
It's kind of what we've been talking about this whole time.
Yeah, of course. So like, and like, it's a very like empowerment, self-empowerment kind of message.
It is. And that and for me, and with Ho'oponopono, the key message is that everything that happens in your life, you're responsible for. Even if you're in an abusive relationship, even if you get hit by a car, whatever happens in your life, it's because of you. And owning that. I was a victim most of my life. I was blaming everyone for how my life was and how I was feeling. And when you claim your power and you acknowledge the fact that I'm here because of me, that also gives you the power to change your life.
Hell yeah.
Right? So that was a huge beginning of transformation for me, when I took full responsibility for everything. And I think if more people would be brave enough to not live the victim story and keep reinforcing that because it's easy, many lives would change.
Yep.
Mm.
I agree with that completely.
Mm.
All right, Suvi, I gotta ask you the question of the podcast. So, Suvi, God yay or nay?
Depends on the day.
All right, that's a
Okay,
good
that
choice.
wasn't my question or my answer. But for me, universe is the feminine energy.
Okay.
So I would say God if she was a woman.
So goddess.
And for me, God is not a person. It's energy. It's the frequency of love, where we all came from, where we all will go when we're done with all of this.
Mm.
So yeah, I don't put a name for her because something that big cannot be sustained in a word.
True that. All right. Well, thank you so much. Mic drop. I love that. All right. Suvi, thank you so much. This was an amazing time. Please let people know where they can find you and follow you on social media and stuff, and anything you want to promote.
Okay, so my everything for me and about me is Huna Works. I have a podcast that I don't really do that much anymore. I might pop a few episodes. Maybe I do one with you. I don't know.
Oh, please do.
But it's called The Elephant in the Room. And you can listen to those on all the platforms, or my website has them as well. So website is Huna Works and Instagram is Huna Works. And that's kind of where I spent most of my time. And then for me, what's coming. So if you want a free mushroom dosing guide, which gives you a bit more than just about dosing, more about how to approach the medicine, that's on my website. You can get that. And there's pre and post courses and education coming soon. Nice. For all of you that you can get from the website as well. And if you need my help, just message me and we'll see if I'm the right person. I might not be.
All right.
Not for everyone.
All right. Thanks so much, Suvi.
Thank you for having me.